Dha te te dha dha te te dha ga te na ki na dha dha te 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 dha dha te te dha ga te na ki na dha te te dha dha te te dha ga te na dha dha. So it's on the up, the second section of the qaida. So it's not an even development, but an offbeat placing of the phrasing. So that's something that I think he introduced into the qaida world of the tabla. So I will play a qaida a little bit later, but I'm just wondering if there's another question. There are many rules to qaidas that need to be discussed, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But if there's another question, let me know.
Dire, dire. Everybody's like, dire, dire.
No questions? Oh,
Dire,
okay.
dire. No, there's
All right.
a lot of questions.
Oh, lots of questions. Okay, one question.
Dire, dire. Everyone wants to know about it. How do you play it? How do you practice it?
Well, थोड़ा धीरे धीरे चलिए तो धीरे धीरे आ जाएगा. Dhira dhira is a very interesting phrase for the tabla. I mean, that's the one thing that it requires for you to do this, use this part of your hand, and therefore all this that you're doing and all this that you're doing suddenly takes a backseat and comes forward with this. So how do you exert same force playing the dhira dhira? I have often said that this dhira dhira was first explored in detail by the tabla maestros of Banaras Gharana, and it started kind of in Farrukhabad, but it was mainly developed in Banaras, and which found its way through Banaras into Bengal, and then in Bengal some great tabla maestro. I think the first time I heard an interesting dhira dhira which got my attention was Pandit Kanai Datta ji, who played dhira dhira. Very interestingly, I was a concert in Ravindra Sadan with a concert hall in Kolkata with Nikhil Banerjee ji, and that's where I heard it, and I said, wow, this is interesting. And then later on it was developed further, and the great maestros like Pandit Sapan Chaudhary ji has made dhira dhira very popular, and he's one of the finest exponent of that particular phrase, and so is Anindo Bhai, and now most tabla players have followed these two, and people like Shubhankar Bhai and Vikram Bhai and so on. They have all excelled in being able to play dhira dhira. I'm still trying to figure out what is the best way for me to play dhira dhira, because my hand was set in a different manner, a pakawaj manner, and so I have tried to ask people like Anindo Bhai and Sopanji and all, and what I've been told is throwing of the hand is an important thing. My father also told me that, but in a different manner. He said throw your hand and let the wrist do what it wants to do. So something like what Ustaad Zakir Hussain Sahab used to do. So there's a station of dadrik and then dhrit stands out and then comes back in the phrasing in terms of dynamics. So that is there in Bengal now, or also in Banaras where Pandit Anokhelal ji and all used to play. It was more even and smooth. So they used to throw their hands that way, out. So it was more like playing reverse theta. And emphasis was on that as opposed to this, which is what I learned. So playing with emphasis here is harder, but playing out it is much easier. So a lot of the relas did not just go dha te re ke te tak, dhere dhere ke te tak. It went dha te re ke te gere, dhere 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 ke te tak. So putting it out, so, and then cupping of the hand. So this doesn't become more prominent, but that becomes prominent. So these are elements of the dhira dhira which were very beautifully combined together in Banaras, and then later on by famous tabla players of Bengal. And so if you can try and find a way to be able to put all that together, then it is possible to dheere dheere get your dheere dheere together.
That's like 100 questions.
Okay, one more question and then we'll go into qaidas, back to qaidas.
Okay, a lot of people are asking about riyaz. How do you focus and how do you get the most out of your riyaz?
How do I focus on riyaz? Well, okay, so I turn the television on to my favorite channel, watch some nice Western movie. My father used to love Westerns, and play. No, that's not true. So, what is the main goal of being able to practice? The goal is not to be able to play like your guru or like your favorite tabla players or etc. etc. But to be able to take all that information and be able to try to transpose it into your hands. Now, having said that, it is going to be natural that you're going to be impressed or inspired by tabla players who don't necessarily all belong to one gharana. They belong to different gharanas. So, your playing then will have to be in such a way developed so that you are able to take elements of all these different gharanas and put it together. That means somehow combining different techniques into one way of playing. And so that's a tough ask. So my idea was to try to do that. And so I found that just playing exactly the way my father taught me to do, which is how I started off, I needed to develop my hands and my fingers and the way they talk to each other in a more detailed manner, so that it includes all types of combinations and permutations that are thrown out by visiting different gharana styles. And so that means developing both hands to be equally talkative with each other. Equally talkative. So that's what I try to do. So sometimes I start with like just a take-up and try to develop both hands individually and then combining together. Having said that, the qaida is one element that makes that possible, to combine these two hands and make them work at a very equal pace and equal level and contributing equally. So that's something that we'll get to. But like for instance, watch out. Sorry. Now doing that, doubling the maya. And then tripling the maya. Always alternating. Going back and forth between them, going from 8 to 6, 6 to 8, or 6 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 6, and so on, and making those combinations. Again, same with the tabla. So, first straight, then, and then, and then 4. So anyway, so these are starting things. Then one of the things that I saw, Ustaad Zakir Hussain Sahab used to stay in our house when he came to Mumbai at some times. I'm talking about late 50s, early 60s, around that time. Because we were living in a place called Mahim, which was then the last boundary of Mumbai, and then there was a police checkpoint, and then the suburbs. So he would stay, and then I saw him that he would practice every day. This was an amazing thing to watch. A great maestro like him still practiced, did not just rely on the idea of, oh, my hands are ready now. So he would do more like a Shiahi come Chati practice. So so this is one of the things that he would do. So I've learned to do that as well. So just to get this loosened up and these guys kind of get used to it. And then combination and permutations of that. So, and then from dha on the kinar to go to the maidan. So, So the idea is to get used to your hand feeling the siyahi, because when you're playing phrases like tere kita, dene gina, dene tere kita, and so on, the siyahi part tends to stand out. And so when you learn to do this, you learn to figure out how to be able to dynamically control that. So, you can, that's why you hear like, not, so you learn to control all that stuff. So that was another kind of practice. When I sat with my father though, at home, it was never like, okay, let's just practice dade dina, dade dina, dade dina, or datir or so on. He always had me playing like as if I'm playing in a concert. So it was more like I had to play with him. So Lera, and then he would start some kind of a qaida or something, and then he would throw a variation out, and I would have to respond to it or play it back, and so on. It was more like that. And so most of the practice that I had to do on my own, and then sit with him and try to figure out what was coming at me at breakneck speed, and without breaking my neck, being able to play it back. So simple things like these dha doubles, and then dhagete development, and then introducing terekete into it will work too. Like and so on and on. So you work all these out. does this, it loosens up this area, and then it doesn't necessarily help you with the baya as much, but what it does is it does allow you to understand this and the relationship between closed and open baya, because there is kray that you're playing, and how you place the kray allows you to be able to back and forth quickly. So that will help you when you are playing kaidas. Phrases like those, it'll help you with those. So that is basically what I do with riyaz. So now I want to come back to qaida, because of course we do themes and we do variations, but there are supposed to be rules on that one must follow, and that's why it differentiates between there's a difference between qaida or rela or something. These days we also tend to play rela like as if you're playing qaidas. In other words, although we use different phrases for relas, we still consider them as theme and variations. So we tend to play relas, long relas with like 20 variations. And so for me, there has to be a balance between that and what the qaida is, because qaida is supposed to be themes and variations. Rela is supposed to, in my opinion, and that I may be totally wrong, is supposed to be something that you ulat, palat, accent, and do all that stuff. And so either that, or we must figure out a way to play qaidas which do not use phrases that are used in rela, and approach it that way. So qaidas meaning, okay, you have the theme, so those are the syllables and phrases that you have that are something that you can rely on and draw from. Nothing else. It's like developing a raga. You have a 5-note scale, pentatonic. That's all you've got, and you've got to work with that. So those are the phrases that you have. Secondly, I think sometimes the Delhi ustads or maestros imposed even further tighter things on it. For instance, they said, okay, if you're playing dhatete, dhatete, dhadhatete, dhagate, nagena, so there's only one tete every time. Dhatete, dhatete, dhadhatete, dhagate, nagena. So at no point in any of the variations you should introduce 2 tetes in a row. So you can't go dhatete, dhatete, dhadhatete, tete. No. So that's something that was also emphasized as and when it pleased the maestro. And the other, of course, thing is that the length has to be always even, whether it's 4, 8, 16 in teen tal or 32. And it should rhyme like a poem would, like dhati dagate nagina is the end, so every variation must end with that, so that you have an ending that everybody recognizes. There are qaidas in Delhi which almost sound like a very long variation, and I would suggest that one should shy away from it. Just stick with ones which are within the one cycle. I'll give you an example. There's a simple theme. Dhag dati dagena dati dagate nagena tak dati dagena dati dagate nagena dhag dati dagena dati dagate nagena tak dati dagena dati dagate nagena. Okay? Or dhak dati dagena dati dag. That's a grace, kray, and we sometimes subconsciously or without thinking about it do put it in, even though it's not in the theme. So those kind of grace notes are possible. Dhag dati dagena dati dagate nagena tak dati dagena. Okay, you can get away with that. But this led to another theme that I heard from Delhi maestro, which was so long, and I said, how do you create a variation? Like 13, 14, 15, 16. Dag dati dagena dati dagatina dagatina dati dagena dati dagatina dadatina dadatina dadati dagatina dadatina dati dagena dati dagatina genata. Already, that's how long it is. So when you have a theme like that, how do you, I mean, 2 cycles long theme, 4 cycles long variations, that gets to be a little, I mean, you can do it and show your prowess as a creator, in that area, but it doesn't help the audience. Audience cannot keep track of what you've come up with and when is the khali arriving and so on. So these are things to be considered. One thing I would say is that qaidas are played differently in different places, right? Like for instance, dati dagena, dhatarikit dati dagate nagena. So it's one terekita, you should be playing that according to the daily idea. But if you go to Banaras, dati dagena, dhatarikit dati dagate nagena, dhatarikit dati dagate nagena, or dati dagena, dhatarikit dati dagate nagena, dhatarikit dati dagena, but dhatarikit dagate nagena, dati dagena, dhatarikit nagena, dati dagate. So dhatarikit is added, and it turns into some kind of a rela idea. And I have nothing against that, I do it myself. But keep in mind that you try to not introduce phrases that are not allotted in the theme. So I'm going to try to play my first qaida that my father had taught me, this one, and see where it goes, okay? 13, 14, 15, 16. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Going into the khali in qaida should be clearly placed, and coming out of the khali into the sum should be clearly placed. So what I see as a good example of that is if you're playing dha, dha, gena, dag, tinna, dha, gena, dag, tinna, kena, dha, dha, gena, dag, tinna, kena, going into tin, so khali. Ta, ta, kena, tak, tinna, ta, kena, tak, tinna, kena, dha, dha, gena, dhag, dhinna, gena, dhinna, gena, dha, bringing it back. So how are you? How's everything going? And the answer is, oh, I'm fine, thank you very much. Ta, ta, kena, ta, katina, ta, kena, ta, katina, dha, dha, gena, dha, dhinna, gena. So it's a resolve, it brings you back. So tinna, kena going into khali, dhinna, gena coming out of khali. Okay? So, and according to your taste, the rest of the tinnas or dhinnas you can work with. So, as you please. So, 13, 14, 15, 17. just developing is that way, and just one finger. Of course, you can get more worked up into it. This I played it at a medium tempo, so it was clear for you to hear the qaida. And so that was one thing that I played. Then he taught me a qaida, same qaida, but addition of T. So dha, dhagina, dhagatina, dhagina, dhagatina, gina, dha, dhagina, dhagatina, gina became dha, dhati, dhagina, tina, dhati, dhagina, tina, gina, dha, dhati, dha. So dha, dhagina became dha, dhati, dha. So dha, dhati, dhagina, tina, dhati, dhagina, tina, gina, dha, dhati, dhagina, tina, gina, dha, dhati, dhagina, tina, dhati, dhagina, tina, gina, dha, dhati, dhagina, tina, gina. So that is the next theme that I played. You can practically transpose the same vistaras that were in the other qaida into this, because the length and the number of beats are the same. Just T has been substituted in there. So. Developing that, and that was after playing that qaida for a while. He introduced Tirikita into it, but that was his concept, his idea. If Delhi was there, then the Tirikit hopefully would not have come into play. But but because it was him, it came into play. So. So now I'm feeling inside of me that I want to slip in a kre every now and then, because it seems natural. So da gadati ta gena te na gena 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 da gadati ta gena te na gena ta kridati ta gena te na gena 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 kridati ta gena. It seems natural to play in there. So by all means, slip it in and hope that nobody notices. It's a grace note, and so that's what it is. So I'm adding another takta, not allowed in the original, but the maestro says so, so I'm doing it. And so the development of the qaida goes into a whole different direction with different sets of do's and don'ts. And so it goes on like that. So so kaidas can go on like that. And dhate ke dhate ke dhate ke dhate nagina. If I was to play, I would try to follow the way the Delhi system suggests it should be, or any other Delhi qaida. I would try to follow the same manner. But I would take liberties if I'm playing qaidas which were suggested from gharanas like Punjab or Banaras or Farrukhabad, because their technique and their ability to be able to introduce a full hand idea is something very interesting. And there are qaidas that allow you some very interesting sparkle, like a, what was it? Farrukhabad. Which allow you an interesting combinations like Dinatere Kita played in there, or you know the famous Ustaad Zakir Hussain Sahab. What was that? Different things like that. So qaidas also have elements that sparkle, but how to keep that away from Rela is something that I'm struggling with, and hopefully an interesting balance would be arrived at with the help of other tabla maestros and so on, so forth. So I'll hold the qaidas here and I'll take one more question.
What did you have for breakfast?
Huh?
What did you have for breakfast?
What did I have for breakfast? Are you kidding? Tabla players sleeping in late and trying to start at 11 o'clock breakfast? Well, I had half a banana and a few almonds. That's what I did. And I was, this is my studio practice office area. It's a little like 3 minutes away from my house. So this is where I practice. Tony G practices, and we have our offices and everything, and so I ran over here as quickly as I could. Now that we've done, I'm gonna go and have maybe a little bit more cereal or some toast and maybe a hard-boiled egg or something, and you know, no nalli nihari or payas or anything like that in Marin County. It's a health conscious county. Everybody goes for hikes and walks and jogs and mountain bikes and everything around here. So for me to even suggest that, everybody looks at me strange, like which planet did you come from? So anyway, okay. Thank you all very much for this Friday, and we will see you next Friday.